Hello, this is Christina Wallace and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're enjoying the lovely British weather that's out there right now, at least if you're living in the UK. I'm about to dust this poppy center with semolina, to which I've added a little bit of a black dust. It's a very fine semolina. I crushed it with a rolling pin on a board before using it. And yeah, the result doesn't seem to be very impressive, but it does work out at the end, in my opinion. And here I'm just trying to straighten up the center just a tad, a little bit, just like this. And yeah, I really wanted to have a very clean, minimalistic black and white poppy. I was very pleased to find some stamens which were black, which I didn't know I had, but then I wanted to try another type of a center and I ended up coloring some of my yellow stamens. You'll see what I've been up to anyway. And yeah, this is a very neat way of bunching up those stamens, in my opinion. Certainly the most convenient I found. There's just a bit of cold porcelain there. And for those of you who use sugar paste, you could just use some floral tape. I don't think it's as nice or as easy to control, but just in case you haven't got any cold porcelain handy. And yeah, just like this, you can curl in your stamens. Of all stamens, these are particularly good quality. They're sold by the Old Bakery and they're Japanese. They're fabulous, really. Now, these little bunches, as I attach them to the base, I find that it's quite tricky to attach them. I always have done, and this is no exception, despite the nice stamens. So if you find it tricky, don't be put off. It's quite natural and quite normal. And here I am trying to have a bigger center and slightly taller base as well. And I want to see how that's going to work, because I really like the way this particular center looks from above. Basically, I just wanted to try a slightly different technique for the center. And yeah, I'm not sure what to make of it once you've seen the whole video, or especially if you've seen this and my other poppy video in its entirety. Please let me know which one do you prefer. Okay, I'm not sure how well you could see it on the video, but the thread that holds the stamens is fantastic. It's really dense, it's firm, they don't shake around, they don't break, they don't bend, they're amazing. Now, unlike this particular stamen, which is used by so many people and does look nice, but the quality just isn't there for me, at least. If you're choosing to use a grooving board, as I'm doing here, and your clay or your paste is a little bit dry, add a little bit of Nivea or perhaps some petal base. It would make your rolling job a lot easier. And the reason why I'm using groove board here is just because I haven't used it in my other videos, so it makes sense for variety's sake, and also because the petals like these for poppy, they are quite fundamental, quite chunky, so why not? So now I'm hoping that my camera is going to behave because I want to show you something. Please pay attention. I want to show you two common problems that happen sometimes when you wire petals, especially if you use a thick wire like gauge 26 here. And the first problem is when your wire picks out just at the very end like this, because the petal bends. So what you do, you just pinch it. You pinch it together nicely. It's easier done with cold porcelain. It doesn't quite make it look as smooth as this, which is the ideal case scenario, but it does help. And it actually helps a lot. So the next problem that could sometimes occur is that the wire, especially thicker wire, does not want to go the same way as your petal when it's in a veiner, because the petal curves and the wire doesn't want to. So what you do is you pinch it with your nail. Before it goes in the veiner, you just pinch it as you wire it, and then it goes in the veiner, and your nice and thick groove just straightens it all out. And apologies for the camera, it's not a very good picture today, but yeah, as you can see, it's all fine. And if it picks out on this side, it's much easier to fix it because there's no pressure. So now I'm going to show you how to make the pod for my poppy flower. In fact, few different variations of it, and then you could choose whichever it is that you want to use for your project. And here, as you could see, I'm making a hook, and you all know how much I like to make umbrellas to hold my flowers on, but this little center is just too small for it. Excuse the dirt on my board, by the way. So yeah, we hold it to about 8, just under 8, but by the time the wire gone in it, it's going to be size 8. And here, obviously it's cold porcelain, so yeah, I'm trying to keep it really soft for texturing later, but it also applies to gum paste because it's kind of gummy and springy. It's also very important to keep it fresh for what I'm going to do, because this smaller ball would kind of go hard really fast as well. So yeah, prepare it, make it fresher. So this is the bit where the fresh paste is quite important, especially if you intend to make loads of little segments, because the smaller they are, the harder it is to make them pronounced, and also on another note, make sure that all your segments are parallel and the same size. The smaller they are, the harder it is to keep them that way. Not terribly hard, but just keep an eye on it really. And your scissors here, they need to be straight blades, you know, like you have curved in scissors. Those are not good for this purpose. You just need them to be straight blades. So one of the ways to continue here is to squish the excess cold porcelain, etc., with your Dresden tool inside the little pod. It gives you this nice texturous look, really, if you like it. And then you smoothen it with water and a brush. You'll see some more of that later. And there is also another way to kind of work it, to work this pod look. And this is the pod. This is slightly bigger pod, so probably not necessarily for poppy, but since I'm showing you how to make it anyway, I'm going to show you a slightly bigger pod. You could make a big version of it for just decorative pod in its own right. See, it probably won't work in a poppy flower really, if you look at the sizing of everything when all the stamens are on and stuff. So here you cut off, not squish in and just make dents in it, but you actually cut off the clay that you don't need, and that would allow us to have a very smooth pod. The body of the pod itself could then stay nice and smooth because we don't have to squish anything in. I hope it makes sense. By the way, do ask me questions on here on Facebook if it doesn't make any sense. So here, as you could see, I have two different pods. They were made by the same principle, exactly the same principle, but the one on my left, the larger one, as you could see, looks quite different from the other one. I've used those yellow stamens that I've briefly showed you earlier, and I've dyed them with food gel, black edible food gel, because it dries so much quicker than oil. And I had a fiddle with it. I tried double layer of petals and single layer, and I didn't 100% like either. I think I might try this with different veining actually, because I love this veiner for my other poppy, the one that looks a little bit more gothic. I'll show you in a minute, but for this one it just didn't feel quite right. Eventually I've settled on smaller petals for smaller center and larger petals for the larger center, just like so. It just seemed to make sense. And though makes sense, it does do, I can't actually say I'm particularly loving either of the flowers or either of the centers when they come together with petals, but I don't know, maybe they are okay, maybe they aren't. Let me know, what do you think? What would you keep out of these flowers? What experience, what look, and what would you just lose and start again? Let me know. See, this is the poppy from my other tutorial from about a year ago, and I absolutely loved it. Maybe it's the middle, I don't know. So here I'm adding a base to kind of contain all this bottom mess of my stamens. I'm wondering to myself how it works in nature. See, this being called porcelain, I probably wouldn't necessarily use wire and just add few lighter and smaller petals as a first row, and that would be my way around it. But I'm just quite curious really how this larger pod would work with petals and where do they go in and go out. It's just technically an interesting question for me here. I guess I would have to find a live flower and inspect it. So I'm trying to kind of see if I could guesswork it before I see one of those. And besides, I think there are quite a few varieties anyway, so I don't know if that's going to answer all of my questions. But yeah, so this is a very easy bit of this flower, just attaching petals. Don't really know what to say about it. Do ask me a question if you're quite new and I've missed something obvious. So I like the way it looks head on, like this particular middle. It's quite pretty, I think. This one is more photogenic, but these stamens, they're not very good in quality. They're just kind of floppy and I hate that. And finally, a stem. Cold porcelain flowers are very distinctive when it comes to their stems. They're just beautiful, nothing like sugar ones, no offense. And here, this is not a tutorial, this bit is just a quick demo to kind of give you an idea of what they're all about, and I am probably going to make a full video on it. That said though, do check out my new wonderful gadget, being a water brush. I love it. It only costs about £3 for 3 brushes and it's so worth it. And on this, I think I'm going to say goodnight to you all now. Have a lovely weekend and I will see you all next week with another tutorial.